Okay, I hope everybody is safe and sound, and I can see 16 students who have joined in. I think in the last class we tried to we did conclude Christina Rossetti's poems. Is that correct? Right. So today we are going to talk about another poet that is Matthew Arnold, and he's also a Victorian poet, and he's one of those famous poets जो कि आप कह सकते हैं कि विक्टोरियन एज के prominent तरीन poets में से है. And the poem that we are going to discuss from his Dover Beach is the poem which brought him the fame and recognition that a poet actually deserves in his lifetime. Okay, let me attach the reading. And also I've attached an article जहाँ पर आप खोल सकेंगे. इट इज कॉल्ड साइकोलॉजिकल डेप्थ्स एंड डावर बीच. सो ये आप पढ़ेंगे तो आपको बहुत अच्छे से ये बेहतर समझ आ सकता है. हाउएवर थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, कॉम्प्लेक्स लेवल पर लिखा हुआ है, बट देन इफ यू वुड लाइक टू रीड देन यू शुड, वो आपको बहुत अच्छे से समझ आएगा. However, for the class study, we'll use the simpler version of it, जहाँ हम इसको आसानी से समझ सकें और हमें प्रॉब्लम कम से कम हो. Let me attach the study here and then we can read. Mm, yes. First, we'll talk about the poem itself, when it was published, what went on. Gale study से जैसे usually हमेशा हम पढ़ते हैं, तो वहीं से हम will be starting from the same. I'll just quickly tell you about the introduction, that it is one of the most famous poems written by him, and it is actually composed during the early period between 1840s to 1850s. He has used metaphors of life and sea in the poem, and we will be able to see the beauty of moonlight and seashore as well. And definitely, he focuses on the uncertainty of life. Now, there is a sentimental touch to the poem because he's longing and he's worrisome and he's very anxious about the changing world and how it is characterized in Victorian literature throughout, that he's very much in conflict uh, because of the fact that everything was changing so rapidly because of scientific and developmental changes, urbanization, globalization, and whatnot. Other than that, we'll be able to see the feelings of isolation, seclusion, loneliness, and what is the power dynamic and how it contributes to all these thematic landscapes that I've mentioned. It also focuses on it laments upon the loss of faith, and it also focuses on that how people are getting away and getting into materialistic stuff and leaving the faith behind. So he is mourning about the loss of faith, that people have lost faith in God, and people have lost meaning. So he uses his understanding and his chaotic, melancholic feeling that he feels so badly in order to disseminate his struggle, internal struggle to the audiences. As far as his autobiography is concerned, he was born to a headmaster. He won a lot of scholarships as well. He was a student of Oxford University, and he gave a lot of English lectures across UK and USA. And then he was part of a team which was assigned to inspect schools. The first collection that he wrote was called The Straight Traveller, and other poems in which he has written about William Wordsworth. However, later on, once he got married to Frances Lucy, who was a daughter of a judge, he was not able to meet his financial status, so he had to take jobs. And the job that he took was of a master's of school that he kept for many years, and that gave him a edge as well. He was able to travel across the world. He went to Switzerland, Holland, France and Germany even. तो उसके पास जो exposure भी था, it really helped him become what he became eventually. So his sample is not just his people. He also looked at many um, um, number of people. He was a teacher as well. He was given a title of professor in Oxford University as well. तो उसने बहुत सारे लोगों से जब ये पोइट्री शेयर की, अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग शेयर की, तो ही गॉट टू नो मेनी थिंग्स एज वेल. एज फार एज द लाइन्स आर कंसर्न्ड, विल टॉक अबाउट लाइन वाइज समरी. पहले मैं आपको पोएम दिखा देती हूँ. लेट मी सी. वेट प्लीज. टेक्स्ट आपको ओपन कर देते हैं यहाँ से. दिस इज द टेक्स्ट. ठीक है, एज यू कैन सी ऑन योर स्क्रीन. इफ इट इज नॉट विजिबल तो आप डेफिनेटली फोन पे भी ओपन कर सकते हैं. देर आर टोटल ऑफ 37 लाइन्स एंड देर आर 4 स्टेंजास. राइमिंग स्कीम की बात करें तो ये फ्री वर्स है. इस पोएम की जो पोइटिक फॉर्म है वो फ्री वर्स है. थीम्स जो हैं नेचर एंड रिलीजन है, स्पिरिचुअलिटी है, और इमोशंस जो इवोक होंगे वो फेथ एंड सैडनेस है. सेंट्रल मैसेज इज द डिक्लाइन ऑफ faith in the English people, and it is written in 19th century. उसके बाद फ्री वर्स में आप देख सकते हैं ABACDBD, इस तरह से इसकी राइमिंग स्कीम है. द बीच बाय मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair. Upon the stairs, straits on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone, the cliffs of England stand. Glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay, come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blenched land. So you can see in the first few lines clearly आप देख सकते हैं कि एक डिस्क्रिप्शन दी हुई है जो कि नेचर के बारे में है, जो आप नोट कर सकते हैं. और फर्स्ट 6 लाइन्स की अगर हम बात करें, ठीक है, these 6 lines: the sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits on the French of coast, and the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast down into the tranquil bay. Come to the window. Sweet is the night air. So Arnold begins his poems with a description of the setting. It's conventionally given that there is a seashore and then there is moonlight as well. The speaker is standing at a window and he's looking at a stretch of the beach that is there in the south of the England near Dover. Right? The name itself, the title of the poem itself clears that. From there, he can see across the English Channel to the French coast just 20 miles away. Now, the moon is full of tide and it illuminates the English cliffs standing at the edge of the sea. He says, Arnold says that the tide is full, which seems to imply that the tide is high. The speaker describes the scene of someone else in the room. In line 6, as we can say, come to the window. जब वो कहता है कम टू द विंडो, तो हमें पता चल जाता है दैट ही इज रेफरिंग टू समबडी एंड ही इज आस्किंग देम टू come to the window. Then we have line number 7. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blenched land, listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which waves draw back and fling. ठीक है. So 7 और 8 लाइन में देखिए, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets moon-blenched land. Now, in these lines, the transition is marked in the stanza, the phrase long line of spray, which describes what results when the sea meets the land, introduces action and perhaps even contention in the poem. Then we have line 9 to 14. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high stand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow and bring the eternal note of sadness in. तो आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पे he's just saying that the to and fro of the water, it goes, it ceases, it goes and then comes back. It's a process that keeps on going on the पेबल्स, राइट। यहाँ पर वो हियरिंग की साइट को यूज कर रहा है, आपकी ह्यूमन कैपेसिटी को यूज कर रहा है, दैट यू कैन हियर दीज थिंग्स। ओके बेटे, व्हेन आई चेंज टू द अदर विंडो, आर यू एबल टू सी ऑन योर स्क्रीन और यू आर जस्ट एबल टू सी द टेक्स्ट ऑफ द पोएम ओनली?
टेक्स्ट ऑफ द पोएम।
सिर्फ टेक्स्ट ही नजर आ रहा है? ओके, लेट मी ट्राई समथिंग एल्स। Okay, no, it doesn't work like that. Wait, please. चलिए फिर ऐसे कर लेते हैं। सो आई एम रीडिंग फ्रॉम हियर ओनली, ताकि आपको पता हो कि मैं कहाँ से पढ़ रही हूँ। नाउ नेक्स्ट लाइंस जो कि मैं आपसे शेयर कर रही थी, दीज लाइंस of pebbles which are waves draw back and fling at the return up the high stand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow, bring the eternal note of sadness. अच्छा, यहाँ पर जो हमारे पास लाइन 15 से 80, 9 से 14 है, इन द डायरेक्ट कंट्रास्ट टू दिस पीसफुल समथिंग, now it should work. Mhm. So, in the direct contrast to his peaceful and pleasing description of the seashore that we have seen, it's you do see nature description clearly over there, जो हमने ऊपर opening में भी पढ़ी है. I hope that's clear to you. उसके बाद, other than that, you can see that he says Arnold uses the word grating roar and fling to achieve a feeling of tension and energy. Then he moves from the visual images to the lines to sound description. So, like any other poet of nature, he's using human senses to describe these things as he details a darker side of the scene. He further says that the waves are able to pick up pebbles and they move across the seashore line to deposit them again in the tide returns. So what he's trying to say that water comes, it makes a sound over the pebbles and then takes the pebbles into the sea with it, which shows the motion of waves, which are also described in line 12 to 14, that is full of sadness, and it also echo the human misery in the line 18 that we'll be studying further. So this to and fro of coming and going of water represents the fading of the religious aspects that were there. तो religion का आना जाना is almost as if जैसे ये पानी आ जा रहा है, और उस वक्त के लोगों में ये इशू आइडेंटिफाई किया था Matthew Arnold ने. Then Sophocles long ago heard it on the Engon, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought hearing by its distant northern sea. Sophocles, as you know, is a dramatist, a Greek dramatist, a philosopher as well. So, as we know that Matthew Arnold himself was a well-versed student in history, Latin and Greek as well. So he knew what these people from the history said. So he has given an allusion from another story, that is Sophocles. और सोफोक्लिस ने ऑलरेडी ये ह्यूमन मिजरी आइडेंटिफाई कर ली थी, ये फेडनेस ऑफ फेथ आइडेंटिफाई कर ली थी व्हेन ही वाज देयर ऑन द सी ऑफ एगॉन. ठीक है. नाउ लाइन 15 to 18. where human misery is there in the opening lines of the second stanza. Now, the second stanza, the structure is shorter. We have less lines as compared to the first one. First one is more likely to be the opening of the poem where he's describing the settings and his feelings associated with it. In the opening lines of the second stanza, the speaker considers Greek tragedy writer Sophocles and wonders if long ago in ancient Greece this writer may have sat beside the Aegean Sea and also been reminded of the endless suffering of man. अब देखिए over the years and over the civilizations, जब जैसे जैसे civilizations change होती जाती हैं, आगे move करती जाती हैं, we go through a lot of suffrage as well. With more inventions and scientific inventions, more complications they come with it. So he's referring to those. Again, Arnold likens sadness to the constant motion of the sea, the turbid ebb and flow of human misery has been mentioned over here. Okay. Then we have lines 19 to 20. Find also in the sound of thought, hearing it by the distant northern sea. In line 1920, provide a transition from the speaker's speculations about Sophocles to the main point of the stanza, the observing a different sea. The speaker, like Sophocles, observing a Aegean, finds a larger message in motion of the sea. Again, Arnold speaks of the sound of the sea rather than the visual images of the water. So he's using his human faculties over here. Then we have the next lines. The sea of faith was once too at full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright gilded fold. But now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges drearer and naked shingles of the world. So the sea of faith, now this now, the representation of the word sea over here is not the actual sea which we have seen in the first stanza. This is the sea of faith. It is representing the people who were from the same faith. Okay, so he's saying that it used to be full, just like that sea that we have seen in the first stanza. कि लोग इसी तरह से they were connected to each other through religion and Christianity, but now I only hear its melancholy and long withdrawing roar. पहले grating roar थी कि roar was coming, जैसे कि हमने नेचुरल डिस्क्रिप्शन में देखा कि पानी आ रहा है और अपने साथ एक रोर ला रहा है, लेकिन ये जो विड्रॉइंग रोर है, it is bringing it taking melancholy and sadness and hopelessness with it when it is going away. So it's the coming and the going of the water, and the roars are representing the fluctuation that we can see in the religion of English people, जहां पर वो इसको रेफर कर रहा है. Now, these lines, the speaker expresses the idea of watching this sea has elicited. The sea of faith is a metaphor for the faith in God and comforted humankind in earlier periods, like the ocean at the high tide, which surrounds the land. Faith, and the poem implies used to premature people's life. The context of the poem suggests that faith provided meaning and comfort in past ages. However, the sea of faith has receded like the ebb and flow of the waves. Here, Arnold employs words like melancholy, withdrawing row, retreating, dread, and naked to convey a sense of loss and despair. The reason I'm reading from this so that you know कि जब हम उसके interpretation को पढ़ते हैं और interpret करते हैं, we can come up with many interpretations और वो बहुत ही spoken language की तरह हो जाते हैं. But we need to be able to write like this, not exactly like this, but somehow our write-up should be very much systematic in this way. The sense of despair, and he uses the images of sea where he did not employ in the description the shoreline that opens the poem. The sea is no longer calm, the night air is sweet, and the shoreline glimmering in the moonlight. Now the waves roar and the wind blow down the dark and naked shoreline. Then we have line 29 to um, 30. Our love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy nor love nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. The line themselves, they represent what his feelings are. He says, "Our love, let us be true," which is probably the companion that he has in the room with him, which is Frances Lucis, जो कि उसकी wife है. So he says, "Let us be true to each other, and let us be very kind to each other." Because the world that we see is not real, it is not what it seems to be. It is like a land of dreams, which is so various. It has so much variety and beauty in it, and it is so new and unique. But that is just a smoke screen. That is not what the world is actually. It is actually a lie. And he says that the world doesn't have any joy, any love, any light, or any peace or certitude to offer. It does not provide comfort to the people in pain. He's also referring to the wars that were going on at that time, and of course, those wars were so pathetic, so demeaning, so gory and destructive that it left a lot of people in pain, and those pains were never taken away. Those pains could never be taken away. Then he says in line 35, "And we are here on a darkling plain swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night." So again, he refers to we. Now, here the we can be Arnold himself and the beloved that he has in the room, or it is the representation of the entire English people, that we are here on a darkling plain swept with confused alarms of struggles and flight, where armies they clash by the night. So, in the opening lines of the third stanza, the speaker addresses his companion directly and beseeches that they should comfort each other, and they should be very much comforted by each other. That is important to stay calm and etc. अच्छा, स्टेंजा 4 की पॉसिबल और जो मीनिंग है वहां पर, he speaks directly to her, which is Frances Lucy, his wife, and perhaps all those who truly believe in God and are still out there. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा, पूरे mankind को, पूरे era को वो refer कर रहा है. He asks that they remain true to one another in this land of dreams. The world is no longer what it was and is more likely to be a dream than it used to be. ये वही बात है जो मैं आपको बता चुकी हूँ. The poem concludes with the pessimistic outlook on the state of the planet as the people are suffering around the world on a darkling plain, confused and fighting for things they do not understand. Real suffering is going on and faith is slipping away. ठीक है, यहाँ तक बात समझ आई, पोएम समझ आ गई. इट्स वेरी इजी, इट्स नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट. कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो बताएं. यहाँ पे हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट लिखा हुआ है, उसको आप देख सकते हैं. In his preface of poems published in 1853, Arnold described the age as one of the bewildering confusion and spiritual discomfort. Right? Dover Beach was more personal matter to be hashed out in the privacy of one's own soul. It was great indeed It was greater indeed than a philosophical controversy between believers and non-believers. तो यहाँ से आप इसका historical context भी पढ़ सकते हैं, जो कि self explanatory है कि क्या हुआ क्या नहीं. ये वही बातें हैं जो शुरुआत में मैं आपको बता चुकी हूँ. ठीक है, तो ये आपने पढ़ लेना है. कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो आप मुझसे पूछ सकते हैं. फिर यहाँ पे कुछ क्वेश्चंस होते हैं, वो भी आप चाहें तो देख सकते हैं. क्रिटिकल ओवरव्यू की बात करें, now this poem is often referred to as one of the first modern poems in the babel of Byzantium poets and poetry. Now, James Dickey argues that the poem deserves this distinction not because of its unusual free verse style, but rather on the basis of its subject matter. Dickey states that the psychological orientation of the poem, the malaise of modern society as science replaces religion, foreshadows a fundamental change in thought. Ultimately, what most critics come back to is Arnold's unique ability to capture the mood of Victorian age. Um, Dover Beach displays at its best Arnold's gift for expressing the feelings of the transitional times, the indecisions, the confusion, the regret. Furthermore, Dorothy Merwin argues in the audience in the poem Five Victorian Poets. तो यहाँ पर आपको और रेफरेंसेस मिलते चले जाएंगे, ये भी आप खुद पढ़ लीजिएगा. इसमें ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जो आपको समझ ना आए. Dicky comments, आखिरी comment देखें, that metaphor of the sea which stands for faith is not entirely successful. If the sea of faith retreats in the nature of waves, it must also return, and Arnold gives the reader no indication that he believes the loss of faith is only temporary. He believes that it is permanent. So that was it for Dover Beach. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. जी मिश्कात पूछे बेटे.
Ma'am, we see elements of nature in both romantic poetry and Victorian as well. So, how can we compare the perception of nature in both eras because it is perceived differently?
Obviously nature description is going to stay the same, right? Description तो वही है ना कि अगर सी की description है तो वो है. उसके साथ जो feelings attach की जा रही हैं in both poets, अगर हम वर्ड्सवर्थ और मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड को ही लेकर चलते हैं, तो मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड was very much inspired by Wordsworth himself, because he has written books. So the first book that he has written, the first collection of poems that he has written, is inspired by that. So इनमें differences तो बहुत आपको subtle मिलेंगे, लेकिन similarities बहुत मिलेंगी. Let me find. I was reading somewhere जहाँ ये लिखा भी हुआ है. I can share it with you ताकि आपको पता चले कि आप कैसे इसको देख सकते हैं. Of course, there could be a question that nature is represented differently in Victorian and romantic era. तो उसके उस पर जब आप बात करेंगे तो इस तरह से बात करेंगे कि आप इन पॉइंटर्स को कहीं ना कहीं पे हाईलाइट करने की कोशिश करेंगे. वन
Yes,
सेकेंड.
ma'am. Okay.
अच्छा, आई कॉन्ट फाइंड द रीडिंग दैट आई रेड इट फ्रॉम. अगर मिल गई तो बेटे पोस्ट कर दूंगी, बट आई कैन टेल यू इन सिंपल वर्ड्स कि अगर हमने डिफरेंशिएट करना है बिटवीन दीज टू एजेस, you can see that these people, romantic poets and we can say Victorian poets, had a different way of looking at nature. Because if you talk about romantics, they were more inclined towards the mythology, and they took nature as a guide, as a mother, as a spiritual guide, and they also took nature as something that can evoke some kind of emotions within. They were very personal in it, subjective in perspective, अगर हम romantic poets की बात करें. And then they also talked about harmony, nature and humor. ह्यूमन एंड नेचर की जो हार्मनी का कॉन्सेप्ट मैंने आपको इको क्रिटिसिज्म से बताया था, उसमें बहुत बिलीव करते थे वो. इंटीमेसी में बिलीव करते थे दैट दीज टू एंटिटीज, ह्यूमंस एंड नेचर, दे हैव टू लिव together and be able to contribute to each other. However, if we talk about the Victorian age, अगर हम विक्टोरियन पोइट्स की बात करें, तो वो नेचर को एक्नॉलेज करते हैं. ठीक है, दे एक्नॉलेज नेचर, कि वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. लेकिन इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर देम, इट वाज ऑलवेज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर विक्टोरियन पोइट्स टू बी लॉजिकल and have some kind of rational reason behind talking about nature or any aspect for that matter. So they were a little, we can say, objective in nature as compared to the romantic poets, because वो बिल्कुल अपनी पर्सनल फीलिंग्स को डिस्क्राइब करते रहे हैं. लेकिन अगर हम बात करें विक्टोरियन एज की, और इसकी ही बात कर ले मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड की, तो यू कैन सी दैट ही इज नॉट जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट हिज फीलिंग्स, ही इज ऑल्सो टॉकिंग अबाउट हाउ कलेक्टिवली वी एज अ नेशन, एज इंग्लिश पीपल, आर गोइंग थ्रू अ लॉस ऑफ फेथ एंड होपलेसनेस इन फेथ. तो इस तरह से इनका डिफरेंस है. एंड आई टोल्ड यू दैट विक्टोरियन एज इज अ क्रिटिक टू द रोमांटिसिज्म, बिकॉज रोमांटिसिज्म में बहुत सारी चीजें आउट ऑफ हैंड हो गई थी. लेकिन वो इस चीज में बिलीव करते थे कि नेचर इज able to प्रोवाइड द इनडिफरेंस ऑफ ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस एंड सफरेज। अभी हमने सफरेज की भी बात की, तो नेचर डिस्क्रिप्शन हमें ये बता रही है कि ये सालों से हमें पता था कि ह्यूमन मिजरी ने आना है, और नेचर वो हमें बताती रही है, लेकिन हमने वो क्लूज देखे नहीं। अदर देन दैट, विक्टोरियन जो पोइट्स हैं वो कल्चरल, स्पिरिचुअलिटी, सोशल कमेंट्री में, सटायर में, आयरनी में बिलीव करते हैं। जैसे कि ये जो पोएम है, ये एक आप कह लें ये एक ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग है, जिसमें पोएट जो है बहुत अपसेट है, वरिड है अबाउट व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन अराउंड हिम, और ये जो फेथलेसनेस आ रही है, जो मॉडर्निज्म बहुत कंप्लीटली एंड बहुत प्रेवलेंटली आ रहा है, इट विल लीव द मॉडर्न मैन इनटू we can say complicated aspects. अगर philosophies की बात करें तो romanticism had one philosophy, that was the fluid nature of life, that there is a transcendence or a transition of life that goes on. Emotion पे focus था, spiritual guide था, nature जो था। और अगर हम बात करें रोमांटिक एज की, तो उसमें नेचर को एज पॉजिटिव लिया जा रहा था। ठीक है, वो पॉजिटिव थी, गाइड थी, मदर थी, नर्स थी। अगर हम विक्टोरियन एज की बात करें, स्पेसिफिकली अर्नल्ड की बात करें, तो डेफिनेटली अर्नल्ड इज वेरी वर्ried एंड स्केप्टिव अबाउट व्हाट इज हैपनिंग। द फिलोसफी इज वेरी, हम कह सकते हैं कि डाउट है उसके माइंड में कहीं ना कहीं। एज फार एज फोकस इज कंसर्न, इमोशन से ज्यादा, इमोशंस तो जरूर है लेकिन वो सिर्फ पर्सनल नहीं है, वो कलेक्टिव है, कि वो कल्चरली एंड सोसाइटल लेवल पे उसको इमोशंस को फोकस कर रहा है और क्रिटिक कर रहा है। जहां पर वो सेकंड और थर्ड स्टेंजा में कहते हैं ना कि सोफोक्लिस हैड ऑलरेडी सीन इट लॉन्ग अगो, एंड फिर वो बात करता है कि उसने ह्यूमन सफरिंग को देख लिया था। फिर लास्ट स्टैंजा में वही कहता है कि लेट अस बी ट्रू टू ईच अदर, लेट अस बी वेरी ट्रू टू ईच अदर, बिकॉज द वर्ल्ड हैज नो सर्टिट्यूड, नो रेमेडी फॉर पेन, नो जॉय, नो लव। तो वही सारी चीज़ों को बताता है। तो वो वहाँ पर एक एग्जिस्टेंस पे क्वेश्चन कर देता है, रिफ्लेक्टिव हो जाता है, मेलनकॉलिक हो जाता है। So that is the difference between the nature or naturalistic aspect that you can find in romantic poets and the um, Victorian poets. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay. Do you guys want to study another poem today, or we should do it tomorrow? No, no idea.
मैम कल करते हैं।
Because we are going to meet tomorrow as well, so we should keep it for tomorrow. And you still have half an hour to our class, so I would highly recommend कि आप इसको दोबारा पढ़ के देखें, ताकि आपको पता चले कि अगर कुछ मिसिंग है तो आप उसको फोकस कर सकें। ठीक है। एक और चीज मैं आपको एक मिनट में अटैच करती हूँ, उसको देख लीजिए। वो आपको हेल्प करेगी मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड को समझने में और समझने में। लेट मी सी इफ आई कैन फाइंड इट हियर। ये मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड की कुछ पोएम्स हैं, जिनके टाइटल्स हैं और छोट डिस्क्रिप्शंस हैं। उसको एक मिनट देख लेते हैं, बिकॉज दिस विल हेल्प यू अंडरस्टैंड कि वो किस किस्म का राइटर है। क्योंकि जो पोएम हमारे पास है ना, वो बहुत कंप्लीट इन नेचर है, और वो बहुत ही एक एक्स्ट्रॉर्डिनरी पोएम है, जो कि बहुत हाईली एक्नॉलेज्ड है। Another poem that he has written is called Growing Old, which is, of course, uh, um, 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 narrated from a perspective of a speaker who's asking a number of questions, and then there are descriptions given that how an old age looks like. There are different stanzas there, and the loss of physical beauty and strength has been mentioned over here. The poem concludes by describing how end of life one will hate their body. तो physical aspect की भी उसने इसमें बात की है। Philomena is a four-stanza poem that was inspired by Greek mythology, which is of Philomena. Philomena क्या है और मिथ क्या होती है, उसके बारे में भी आपको थोड़ा बहुत पता हो तो आप अपने आंसर में उसको डेफिनेटली एंटर कर सकते हैं। नाउ इस पोएम में अगर हम बात करें तो इट्स रिटन इन फ्री वर्स एंड इट इज 4 स्टेंजास। और इसमें जो पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ अ नैरेटर है वो है plight ऑफ अ करेक्टर फ्रॉम ग्रीक mythology. While poem does not have a set rhyming scheme, there are number of end sounds that can be found in repetition, such as pain, brain, dew, and perfume. Right? This poem is able to provide a sense of unity without having strict structure to it. अब देखें, hark, a little nightingale, the tawny throat, hark, from the moonlit cedar water burst. What triumph, hark, what pain! Wandered from Grecian shore, still after many years is distant lands, still nourishing in the bewildered brain that wild, unquenched, deep sunken and world pain. आप देख रहे हैं कि अभी जो हमने डावर बीच पढ़ी उसमें पेन पेन, वर्ल्डली पेन, मूनलाइट, सडर, बस्ट, नाइटिंगेल, डिस्टेंट लैंड्स, इसी किस्म की उसने डिस्क्रिप्शन यूज की है अपनी उस पोयम में भी। तो इस तरह की सिमिलैरिटीज आपको मिलेंगी ही मिलेंगी। Basically, the speaker talks, sorry, directly to the bird, asking if it is still pained by the suffering it lived as a human woman. ठीक है। एक नाइटिंगेल है, उसका सॉन्ग है। नाइटिंगेल्स यूजुअली जो सॉन्ग्स गाते हैं, मोस्टली जो सॉन्ग गाते हैं वो फुल ऑफ एगनी एंड पेन होते हैं। और यहाँ पे क्रिश्चियन सेंट यूजीना के बारे में बात हो रही है। तो ये पोएम भी आपको आप पढ़ेंगे तो ग्रीक मिथोलॉजी का रेफरेंस आपको मिलेगा, कहीं ना कहीं से हिस्टोरिकल रेफरेंस मिलेगा, जैसे कि डावर बीच में था। डावर बीच इज अ ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग, ये आपने याद रखना है। देन वी हैव बuried लाइफ, इट्स अनदर मोनोलॉग इन विच द स्पीकर ट्राइज टू एनालाइज कॉम्प्लेक्स फीलिंग्स। यहाँ पे भी डावर बीच में भी हमारे पास कॉम्प्लेक्स फीलिंग्स ही हैं। ही रिमेंबर्स बीइंग स्ट्रक बाय एन अनकंट्रोलेबल सैडनेस brought upon him by his lover. And then he talks about that how man lives and how fate determines that what kind of life and instability and ability that the person will have in their life. The speaker declares how towards the end of the poem everyone can and should look into their buried life. It's a place of peace. यानी आखिरी destination is being dead and being under your grave. Then lines written in Kensington Gardens. It's also a historical reference because in those eras, the royal-blooded people used to go and enjoy in the गार्डन्स। ये गार्डन्स बनाए जाते थे जहाँ पर पीस एंड काम को कहीं ना कहीं से गैदर किया जाता। तो इन सारी चीज़ों के बारे में, नेचुरल वर्ल्ड के बारे में इन 4-5 पोएम्स में वो क्लियरली बात करता है। आई होप इट्स क्लियर इन योर माइंड कि वो किस तरह का राइटर है और वो क्या कुछ उसमें डिस्कस करता है। तो दैट विल बी ऑल फॉर टुडे, राइट। विल कंटिन्यू टुमारो, राइट। एनी क्वेश्चंस बेटे, कोई सवाल हो तो बताएं। एवरीथिंग इज क्लियर। अब आपने ना, आपने इसको पढ़ना है, पढ़कर देखना है ताकि आपको समझ आए। जी अरूज, कुछ कह रहे हो बेटे?
नो मैम।
ठीक हो गया। ओके एवरीवन, अल्लाह हाफिज, टेक केयर।